to try to open a rosebud with her own two hands. As she would pull the petals open, they would tear or bruise or even break off in her hand. Finally, in frustration, she said, "Grandma, I just don't understand it. When God opens a flower, it looks so beautiful. But when I try, it just comes apart." "Well, honey," her grandmother answered, "there's a good reason for that. God is able to do it because God works from the inside out." God works from the inside out. What a wonderful statement and a great way for us to look at the Pentecost experience. God from the inside out is what the disciples came to understand at Pentecost. We just read the story from the book of Acts. We read it each year on Pentecost Sunday. The disciples are in the upper room waiting and wondering what's coming. What is this Holy Spirit business anyway? Maybe we misunderstood Jesus. Maybe it's already happened. How long, Peter? How long? How long, John? How long must we wait? But then they heard a sound, and we're told the breath of God began to blow on that place like the rush of a mighty wind. Images of fire danced around them, not burning the building, but resting upon them. Suddenly their fear was gone, replaced by so many emotions. There was peace and confidence, courage and strength, unity of heart and spirit. There was joy and excitement. There was power that was beyond being able to be explained. And as they left the upper room, bursting forth with renewed energy, we are told that their minds were open and they understood Jesus' promise. They boldly declared the gospel of Jesus Christ to people from all different backgrounds, and they heard the gospel in their own language, which blows me away since I can't speak a foreign language. And the people responded. And it's recorded for us that 3,000 people were converted to following the ways of Jesus that day. Now, there are three symbols from the Bible I'd like us to consider today for the Holy Spirit. Each reminds us how God works through us and how God works from the inside out. They are our traditional symbols of the church for the Holy Spirit. They are breath, the symbol of life, fire, the symbol of power, and the descending dove, the symbol of peace. First, there is breath, the symbol of life and vitality. In the Garden of Eden, God created Adam and Eve. They were lifeless until God breathed into their nostrils the breath of life. Breath is life. At Pentecost, we see the breath of God like the rush of a mighty wind that blew upon that place, and the disciples came alive with new vitality and a new life's purpose. Some people go through life with a very subdued spirit. They have no zest for life, no commitment, no drive, no ambition to participate in the world. Like robots, they just go through life, going through the motions, but not really living at all. Knowingly or unintentionally, they have blocked joy and power of the breath of God out of their lives. Jesus said, "I came that they might have life and have it abundantly." Jesus was speaking of the fullness of life through fullness in the Spirit. How is it with your spirit this morning? Is your spirit full? Or do you feel empty, tired, and worn out? Is God present in your life? Does that fact empower you? Do you hear the voice of God calling you to action? Or is there something blocking the communication between God's Spirit and your spirit? Has God's Spirit breathed on you the breath of new life? Let's face it, we are all alive, we are all breathing right now, but I'm talking about the vitality of your spirit here. You may be doing just fine, but once the Holy Spirit of God joins with your spirit and enters fully into your heart and life, you will experience the fullness of life that Jesus spoke about with his disciples when he said, I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. The hymn writer Edwin Hatch, long ago in 1878, recognized the importance of this and wrote the words to the song we sang a few minutes ago, Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew, that I may love what thou dost love, and do what thou wouldst do. Now those are older words, but you get it. You get what he means, right? Verse 3 is my favorite. Breathe on me, breath of God, till I'm wholly thine. Fully and completely, wholly thine. Till all this earthly part of me glows with thy fire divine. That leads us to the second symbol, the symbol of fire and power. In the Bible, fire is often used as a symbol of God's presence through fire and with power. For example, we see it in the burning book of Exodus, right? What was so special about the burning bush in Exodus?
It burned, but it wasn't consumed.
It burned, but it wasn't consumed. That's God's fire power. And what about the pillar of fire that led the people of Israel through the desert? They recognized that as God's presence among them. And then here in the New Testament story of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit's power is not the power of brute force or blatant intimidation. It's not the power of political clout or weapons, but instead it's the power of knowing God's presence in our lives and what that presence produces in us. Integrity, honesty, justice, mercy, love, and a greater commitment to something outside of ourselves. The sense of being God's co-worker with the assurance of God's love. And there's nothing stronger or more powerful than that. That's the fire power of Pentecost that fuels and empowers and energizes us. It's the power that enables us to do great things. Not on our own power, but through the power of the Holy Spirit. When we live sure and secure that God is with us, and that God is for us, and that God wins every time we are empowered. It is through this Holy Spirit that we are reassured that nothing, not even death, can separate us from the love of God through Jesus Christ. There's incredible power in that, and there's comfort in that. And that power is the power that removes fear and allows us to live knowing we are loved and we have a purpose. And yet the Holy Spirit warms us and melts our cold, cold hearts. Once upon a time there was a piece of iron which was very strong and very hard. Many attempts had been made to break it, but all had failed. I'll master it, said the axe, and his blows fell heavily upon the piece of iron. But every blow only made the axe's edge dull and blunt, until it finally ceased to strike and gave up in frustration. Leave it to me, said the saw, and it worked back and forth on the iron surface until its jagged teeth were all worn and broken. And then in despair the saw quit and fell to the side. Ah, said the hammer, I knew you two wouldn't succeed. I'll show you how to do this. But at the first fierce blow, off flew its head, and the piece of iron remained just as before, proud and hard and unchanged. Shall I try? Asked the soft, small flame. Forget it. Everyone else said, what can you do? You're too small and you have no strength. But the small, soft flame curled around the piece of iron, embraced it, and never left it until it melted under its warm and irresistible influence. This is the way of love. Love is embracing and warm. Might I suggest God's way is not the way of force, but the way of love. God's way is not to break hearts, but to melt hearts and mold them so we can be the best self for God and for others. Perhaps it means that part of our calling is to be available to the Holy Spirit to bring others to God so God can love them and fill them and use them to spread love in the world. And then there's the symbol that we're so familiar with, the descending dove, the symbol of peace. The early Christians, in creating this symbol, were very wise to show the dove descending, because peace does indeed come from above. Inner peace, poise and serenity, courage and confidence helps us to meet life and its troubles with steady eyes and steady hearts, filled with wisdom, which comes from the presence of the Holy Spirit in our hearts. This we know comes from God. We first read of the dove representing the symbol of peace in Noah's story, when the dove returns to the ark with an olive branch, alerting Noah and his family that the waters had receded and life had begun once again. Can you imagine the excitement of Noah and the feeling of relief and the inner peace that he felt when the dove returned? Next, we read of the dove descending from above at Jesus' baptism. The Spirit of God descends as a dove, like a dove, as if it were a dove. You see, it's so hard for the Spirit to be clearly defined. But the Spirit in peaceful form is often represented as a symbol of a dove. The important aspect of this symbol of the Spirit is that it displays a peace that passes description and understanding, a peace that we cannot fully explain. And while the Roman Church imagined the Holy Spirit in the form of a peaceful, graceful dove, the ancient Celts understood the Holy Spirit to be like a wild goose. When you hear of the Spirit descending like a heavenly dove on you, you hear harps and strings softly playing, and you get a peaceful feeling. The image of the Holy Spirit as a dove has become so familiar and so domesticated as an image that we can forget the mighty power in the Spirit. But however, let's imagine a wild goose descending upon you. Now that's a different matter altogether, isn't it? A wild goose is noisy, bothersome, and violent. I like this image of the Holy Spirit as a goose because it jars us out of our complacency. It moves us. We need this image to correct our overly safe and overly sweet image of the Holy Spirit by filling it once again with power and action. When the Spirit comes in the Bible, it never seems to be sweet or safe. God's Spirit calls the prophets to speak to Israel in words that were bold and dangerous. Ezekiel saw a vision of God's Spirit blowing through the valley of dry bones and bringing them to life. That's scary. John the Baptist, dressed in camel's hair and eating wild locusts, proclaims, "I baptize you with water, but he who comes after me will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire." That's power. When we think of the Holy Spirit as a dove, we may not think about persistence either. But when we think of it as a goose, we might even get a little scared. Have you ever been chased by a goose? Or seen someone being chased by a goose? It's frightening. Ever been chased by God's Holy Spirit into doing something outside of your comfort zone? It's scary. We can be afraid to step up or afraid to step out of our comfort zone and do what God asks us to do. The Holy Spirit is quite persistent in your life, prodding you to follow through on what God calls you to do. Yeah, not exactly the picture of a peaceful dove in those terms now, is it? But you see, no matter how you envision the Holy Spirit today on this Pentecost, the important thing is that you consider the presence of God's Spirit at work in and through your life. That inner voice of God that prods at you and converses with you to not only help you make decisions, but also to keep you focused on your relationship with God and your relationship with others. I'm here to tell you the same thing the disciples said on that first Pentecost day. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Won't you invite Jesus into your life? Be intentional and call upon God's Holy Spirit. You can say, "Come, Spirit, come." It's as simple as that. Invite the indwelling Holy Spirit to fill you with God's love, with God's direction, and with God's purpose for your life. If you do, you can be sure that you will begin to understand Jesus' words, "For I have come that they might have life and have it abundantly." Thanks be to God. Amen.